The saga of the drone sightings in New Jersey just keeps getting stranger. The White House is now saying the drones aren't real, except for the ones that are. And why I think the nuclear material theory is a load of bunk. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so this is a statement from DHS, FBI, FAA, and the DoD on these reported drone sightings. And this is a weird combination kind of at baseline because, well, two of these are cabinet level positions. DHS and DoD are major cabinet level agencies. The FBI sits within the Department of Justice, so why they aren't signed on to the statement is kind of weird. And the FAA, of course, within the Department of Transportation. Now, I'm splitting hairs here. I acknowledge that. Again, the goal is to communicate to the public a level of reassurance. And so by naming agencies that they think should be involved into this statement, it helps sort of consolidate things. Now, they start by saying that there are thousands of drones in the sky on any given day. Totally true. And technology and landscape evolving, we expect that number to increase over time. They point out that the FBI has received more than 5,000 reported drone sightings in the last few weeks, with approximately 100 leads generated, right? Now, this is what's mostly interesting. They say they then go on to acknowledge that they have examined the technical data from the tips and concerned citizens. They think that the sightings to date include, but do not entirely encompass, a combination of lawful commercial drones, hobbyist drones, law enforcement drones, as well as manned fixed-wing aircraft, helicopters, even stars, and they forgot to mention satellites, right? Which is something that you can see with the naked eye in a lot of cases and traverse the sky in a pretty distinct way. But all of which were likely mistakenly reported as drones. We have not identified anything anomalous and do not assess the activity to date, this is where things get weird, to present a national security or public safety risk over the civilian airspace in New Jersey or other states in the Northeast. Now, I want to point some things out. First off, 5,000 reports to about 100 leads generated. So this means that of those 5,000 reports, about 100 were deemed to actually have been a sighting of something that the FBI likely can't explain because they just said that they checked and they said most of these can be dismissed. So on one hand, you have this acknowledgement that says, listen, this is just sort of, I guess I don't know if hysteria is the right word, but a lot of this is just people who don't know what they're seeing, saying that, it's a drone. I see a drone. But this doesn't mean that there aren't drones. As the FBI itself acknowledges, there's about 100 leads that have been generated that they say we can't figure out what this is. And again, of those 100 leads, likely some of them are the same drone being reported by a number of people. Now, here's where things get interesting. One is they do not assess the activity to date to present a national security or public safety risk over the civilian airspace in New Jersey, which is weird because there's military airspace in New Jersey, which this implies, of course, that there is a national security and public safety threat. And they go on to say, oh, yeah, there totally is. They said, we recognize that there's concern. We want more anti-UAS legislation. Sure. They say, but then they add this part. They say, additionally, there have been a limited number of visual sightings of drones over military facilities in New Jersey and elsewhere, including within restricted airspace. Such sightings near or over DoD installations are not new. This is true. The DoD takes unauthorized access over its airspace seriously and coordinates with federal, state, local law enforcement as appropriate. Local commanders are actively engaged to ensure there are appropriate detection and mitigation measures in place. So this is what I find preposterous. They say, and they say things. This is a classic government statement because they say a bunch of things that are true that are meant to lead you to a conclusion that is not actually stated. So what do they say that's true? They say it's true that a lot of the people, the majority of the people that see things in the sky and call them in, are seeing things that are normal. And here's simple evidence. This is a heat map of Monmouth County, New Jersey, and you could see there is reportedly just south of I-9, kind of right below, I think, Robinson by here. You can see there's a huge concentration of drones, guys. There's a mega drone operation going on here, and it's kind of weird because, again, you're sort of stuck asking yourself, well, like, why this area, right? When you pull up a map, you could see that, right, here's Naval Weapon Station Earl, right? And here is kind of this I-18. Here's I-9. So they're saying right here is where there's this bizarre concentration of drone sightings, like very dense. And when you zoom in, you realize that there's a flight school here. So they're seeing likely these planes, right? You could literally see small aircraft. And so when people say, oh, it's about the size of a car, single engine Cessna is absolutely about the size of a car. So this is, I would say, a pretty good chance that this is all it is, right? And why wouldn't there be, right? This is a predictable thing. And these are likely going to be landing, so they're going to be flying low at about 200 to 300 feet, totally in line with reports. So then there's some other issues, right? Because that's not the only place. You also have, again, Naval Air Station Earl, which is your Naval Weapons Station, excuse me, which, if you look, is just a few miles to the east. And you can see that Naval Weapons Station Earl has some weapons. You can see each of these little things is actually looks like a bunker, which is interesting. And more importantly, it contains both Naval Weapons Station Earl and, let's see if we can find it here, there's also a nearby Trump golf course. Let's see if I can track it down here. I guess I could just search for it. Let me do that real quick, right? Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Trump National Golf Course at Colts Neck, right next to Naval Weapons Station Earl. So again, if you're wanted to examine this, this would be a key spot you'd want to go to, right? Now, they also say there's a ton of sightings here along the seaboard here near New York, right? Port Monmouth, etc. And while I don't really know if there is any kind of like major military sites, right? But we could plug it in here and see what we get. See if there's anything here. Again, there's some old historic naval sites, but not really anything else, right? A hospital, reserve recruiting office, not really anything major here. But again, I think what you are more likely seeing is a flight path as they enter from this area, right? Enter from the ocean and head towards, again, this naval weapons station. And so the reason I bring this up is because in some cases it's true that most of these sightings are nonsense, and that it's also true that there is absolutely 100% credible sightings of unknown drones flying over military facilities. And while they say that there are a limited number, like, what is the alternative? An infinite number of drones, right? And so I think the thing to take away from this is that it says things that are obviously true, and it wants to lead you to this conclusion that says that there is the drone problem is limited. It's not a big deal. It's under control, right? So again, it's like the old chart where they say, okay, there aren't any drones. And then we go, well, no, actually, there are drones, but it's not a problem. Now we go, actually, yeah, there are drones. They fly over military installations. We don't know who and what they are, but, it's not a big deal. So the next two steps are going to be, actually, there's drones everywhere and we don't know who they are, but that's a good thing. Right? So this is just an insufferable reaction. Anyway, guys, I wanted to point out two things. First off, if you want to support the channel, best way to do it definitely is going to be by hitting that subscribe button. Also, it's the holidays, and that means that you guys may need a little bit of extra energy to make it through the last push into the new year, especially if you're going to be up watching the skies. And so you may need a little extra caffeine. Well, don't spend $5 on an energy drink. Instead, what you're going to want is StrikeGum. StrikeGum has 90 milligrams caffeine in every piece, 100 milligrams alpha GPC, zero sugar. This is my company. I developed StrikeGum in conjunction with Liquid Core, a manufacturer right here in the USA. And it was inspired by my time in Afghanistan when, if I wanted caffeine on a long combat patrol, I had to chug a lukewarm military issue energy drink. And once you've had that experience, you know there's a better alternative. So if you're looking to bring your caffeine consumption into the 21st century, look no further than StrikeGum. You can go to strikegum.com or search on Amazon, just StrikeGum. You can't miss us. We're the highest rated energy gum on there. Okay, so I want to also talk about the theory that's being posited that these drones are flying low and they're looking for gas leaks or radioactive material. This is according to one drone operator or drone manufacturer in Kansas. Right? And what I think is interesting is, again, I don't think this is true for a couple of reasons. The first is that where's the one place where the government does not need a help searching? That's going to be a military base, right? There is no privacy on a military base. You are not free from search and seizure, especially if there's military necessity. Anywhere on that base can be accessed. And so the fact is that these drones are being spotted in and around the Naval Air Station, is itself indicative of the fact that they're not looking for something that was lost, right? Because, well, frankly, why would you have it? Why would you lose it from the Naval Air Station? Now, the other thing is that wherever they're looking, they are likely trying to, there'd be a search pattern, right? And you would see a more consistent sort of spread. Remember, this is just the Monmouth County Sheriff's Office. So you wouldn't see these high levels of concentration in certain areas. You would see a systematic search or searching pattern. And I think that is the takeaway here, that if they were looking for nuclear material, they would be systematically searching, right? And we can actually look this up, right? Flight path searching. So when you look at how flights are or searches are conducted, let's see if I aerial search pattern. Okay, flight path of an aerial search pattern. You could see here that this is an example of a flight pattern of an actual aerial search, right? You see how it's systematically here, right? Again, here's coverage path planning. You could do a back and forth. You can do a sector search, a square, a line formation. You can do a series of loops. You can even do a barrier patrol or a sort of Zamboni interlocking loops. But the key takeaway, again, here's another example of a search where they are looking for someone who is ranged out from an area. And so you have this cloverleaf. These are all search patterns that are similar to ones that, say, rescue divers make, or, again, there's another example of a search pattern, very dense search pattern. So that's what you would see from these drones. And the fact is that you don't see that. You see, again, something very chaotic, something that appears to be flight paths moving directly into some kind of area and remaining there, to me says that this is likely not part of a searching pattern. There's also just better ways to do things, right? If you have evidence that a crime has been committed, you would see local law enforcement roped into things. For example, they believe nuclear material was missing. What you would have instead is local sheriff's departments, local PD. They would likely be performing DUI checkpoints at various key roadways where they think things are happening, right? This is a legal authority that a lot of that all cops have to just perform random DUI checkpoints to look for something. Right. And you would also have local PD. They wouldn't be combative with the federal government because they would be involved. Right. There is zero reason, if there was a national security incident like this, the cops wouldn't need to know everything. They would just be issued a publicly acknowledged be on the lookout form. They would, again, be staging sort of these type of events under the guise of DUI checkpoints or other kind of security searches. The fact that none of that has happened is indicative to me that there's likely not some sort of timed hunt, so to speak. They're not trying to hunt something down. What's my theory on this? Well, I think it's pretty simple. I think the government's correct in that a lot of people are misidentifying stars, planes, satellites, even police drones looking for these other drones as the drones. But that doesn't mean that there aren't a few dozen drones or a few hundred drones potentially flying, looking after particular sensitive sites in the United States, right? And a lot of people say, well, why would they have U.S. markings? Well, if I were the Chinese and my goal was to conduct drone flights over military installations, something that they've done routinely over the past several years, what I would do was found a drone company, get those drones licensed to fly in the United States, and then fly them over military installations, right? Using FAA-approved lighting, doing everything right. Why? Because if you're going to commit a crime, you do one crime at a time. You don't want to make it easy. It's just like Al Capone getting hit with tax evasion. If Al Capone had managed to just pay his taxes on time and was, well, more straightforward. I mean, he couldn't be because he was an organized crime boss. But if he had paid his taxes on time, the feds would have had nothing on Al Capone. And that is sort of the goal of some of these espionage operations. They want to sit there and make it as legal as possible. Look no further than the Turkish government bribing Eric Adams, the New York City mayor, right? Turkish intelligence was deeply involved, but because they were they relied on dual citizens and they followed a lot of the U.S. laws explicitly. It made it very hard for the feds to actually detect and then charge the person responsible. So I think that's what's happening. I think these drones are very much licensed to fly in the United States. They have proper FAA markings. I think they're just being flown in places that would enable foreign adversaries to detect them. Again, I think likely these are going to be found to be associated with companies, with commercial operations, but further investigation, I believe, will show that these companies are fronts for hostile governments who are, again, collecting data on U.S. sensitive sites like Picatinny Arsenal, like the Naval Weapons Station, like Joint Base Dix Lakehurst, and Limerick Nuclear Power Station, and other sensitive U.S. sites, right? Anywhere the U.S. says the airspace is restricted, in all likelihood, the Chinese, Iranians, North Koreans, or Russians would be highly interested in seeing what's actually there. Anyway, guys, that's all I had for now. Again, hit that subscribe button. Check out get your StrikeGum at StrikeGum.com. Thanks to Bill Collier, Robert Colburn, Guys Barney, and Gina Cuesta, Chris Gorsuch, Francis Carius, Ale90, Petra Tororu, all our Lieutenant Tier members. Couldn't do it without you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.